Hello.
Hello. This is Lindsay the Stager, Lindsay Wilson. I am your podcast host of Floorily, Design Time from the Floor Up. And I have the privilege of interviewing my friend and fellow realtor today, Chrysti Peek. Hey, girl.
Hello. Thank you so much. This is so exciting.
Isn't this fun?
Yeah. We get to talk so much, and now it's like
Everybody's
people
going
always
to
ask.
listen
They're
to us
like,
talking.
well, I feel like people always ask, especially when I'm like doing staging or not staging, when I'm doing like my listing presentations and stuff like that. Everybody's always like, but what are we going to talk about when she comes, and what is it like? And I'm like, well, now you get to see. This is like your agent and your stager are people too. And
I know.
This is what it sounds like. Yeah.
I love that. How long have you been a realtor, Chrysti?
Coming up on 5 years, which feels like so weird because it feels like yesterday and 1,000 years all at the same time. But yeah, 5 years.
So
We've
5
been working
years.
together.
So listen, I have some interesting stats that I had a chance to look up because, of course, I was a half an hour early to the party today.
Yeah.
But guess what? You and I have been working together since June 2019.
Mm-hmm.
In that time frame of almost 4 years, we've done 18 deals.
Uh-huh.
And our first one, I think you'll remember this if I remind you. Do you remember what our first one was?
It was the one in Parkwood, right? Where
Limerick. 1032
yes,
Limerick.
yes.
Is that the one?
That's it. Yeah.
So that's the one that you were so impressed because I suggested that they paint their red brick outside chimney from brick to white. And it made it the cutest
Gorgeous.
little green shiplap cottage.
Yes.
So how did you even find me in the first place?
So Matt Harmon. I was looking for,
right.
And it's so hard when you're new and you're asking people like, who do you use? Who do you use? Because it's always like, it's just stressful. You feel like everybody has an opinion about everything. And I was like, maybe I should ask the photographer. Like, I feel like the photographer is probably a really good place to start. And he definitely did not steer me wrong. Yeah.
Aw, Matt Harmon is such a good friend of mine. He is my favorite photographer and did my website and everything. And I haven't seen him in a while, but I'm so glad that you found me because, Chrysti, in 2019, I was only charging $150 for my consultations.
I remember.
Now they have doubled, which is like $300 for a staging consultation is the word on the street.
100% worth it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to hear you say that. What if you were like, meh? But you know what? There are some people that will not pay me $300. And they have paid me in other ways, maybe with a lot of referrals, but I just can't get into a conversation with them about that. Like, I don't want to lose them as a friend or their business. So some people will not pay it. And it's just something we don't discuss. Isn't that weird?
I think that's kind of crazy. Well, you already know this when you come into any, like when you meet my clients, you already know that as long as they don't say I'm not doing anything, right? Like that they're going to get staging because that $300 that gets spent for the consult and then whatever the staging fee is after that, like we make them back. Like
I know, right? What percentage do we make them back? Always.
Oh my gosh. I don't think. I used to be a math teacher and I never did the percentage on it, but I know that everybody is always.
Oh, I think I know though. I think that they make back 30%.
I was going to say, I think that we've only had one that went below asking, and it was below asking by like $1,200 or something because the house next door sold to Open Door and it like killed the neighborhood comps. Yeah, like there were two different listings at the same time through Open Door and like killed the comps in that neighborhood. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I just use Open Doors. That's my generic iBuyer conversation thing because it's what everybody remembers. I don't know if it's actually them or not. So I don't want to get in trouble with anybody for like throwing them under the bus.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
One of the things that is so great about the way that you do your real estate business with eXp Realty, by the way, is that you always pay for the stagings.
Every time.
So the last podcast, I was talking to another realtor, and she doesn't pay for my stagings, but we're talking about how of the 20 solid realtors that I work with, everybody does it differently. I used to work with Ida Turbot, and I don't anymore because she's so like high-end luxury that she uses a company called Show Homes, and I think they actually like have people living in staged homes. Isn't that weird?
Oh.
And not a service that I offer, and I don't want to. But she used to not pay for the consultations. She used to make her clients pay for every single bit. And it's just, it's not what makes it's what makes you successful in what you do. She's successful in what she does. Everybody does it in a different way. And I love when I get a call from you or a text and you're like, I have a listing, because I know that I'm already staging it. Like, I don't have to sell them the staging.
I think that as long as you know what your system is, but like for me, and I'm really upfront with it, and my marketing has a lot to do with the business that I get for listings. Like, people see my listings because I think everybody does pictures, but with the video and with everything else, like, and you've seen the feedback, Lindsay, I don't think we've had a listing together where we haven't got some amazing feedback about how well it shows and how well it's staged, like every single time. And
how about we just got the word effusive from Ashworth?
Yes.
I had to look that up. I need to like put a post up about that word. It means like showing something in a demonstrative way that is like bubbly and fun. And I was like, oh my God, I love that word.
I feel like that should be a part of your branding now. But like effusive. But like for me, and like what had happened with that listing, like you staged that, and then also, I have the property website, and I have all of the videography, and I have the video that goes on the website and in like social media. And when one of the sellers had looked at it, she's like, I had no idea you were going to do all of that. And to me, it's not just, it's an investment in the house. I want to make that client the most amount of money possible. But me paying for that staging and that marketing is an investment in my business also. People know what my brand is and what they're going to get.
Yes.
And to me...
And you're setting a standard.
And what I tell my clients is I will pay for it. I mean, if they had something crazy and came back and said, we have different colored neon walls in every room and we're not painting everything or anything at all, like, we would have a conversation, right? Like, it has to make sense. But, to me, what I say to them is it takes a lot of work to get your house ready to go on the market. Like, it does. There is preparation involved. There's a lot of sweat and cussing and like money, you've got to invest in it. And that's my way of saying, like, I'm going to honor the investment that you put in to getting the most out of your house by doing this for you. And I think that that's very fair. If they're going to invest all of that to get their money back, I will invest this so that they top it off a little bit more.
Love it.
It's for both of us.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, you trust me so much that exactly 4 months after we started working together in 2019, you hired me to do your own home with your adorable husband, Cliff.
Yes. And I was actually just talking to one of our mutual clients about that, who is probably going to be reaching out to you to do the same in their next house.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
And it's really funny.
We had so much fun shopping. We like fell on the beds backwards and took a picture of it at Bassett. We had so much fun. I mean, I can't believe that I get paid for what I do, first of all.
Well, it's really funny because I'm actually in Savannah right now. So you have the beautiful blank hotel room wall behind me. That's why it looks like that.
I was going to say, I didn't know where you were.
This is not my house for anybody who's like, Lindsay designed that? No, this is a hotel in Savannah. But we were FaceTiming with the kids last night, and like they walk around and they're doing all, and I'm like, God damn, our house looks good. Like, I'm like looking at the railing that you helped us pick out. Like, there's the cat. I was like, man, and like, because
I want to come over and see it
that way. Yeah, I got to clean up first.
Do you know that we did that, Chrysti, in 2019? It's like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Maybe. I think we did most of it in 2020, even though that was crazy COVID.
Yes, we did end up doing, because it got pushed back, and then it was getting the contractor.
Was I pregnant while we were doing it?
No. So you had River. We were staging Reptile Room House.
This is a good story. Tell it.
So this one on the market, I think, like, you dropped Daisy off at school one day and then had a baby and everything shut down, like, all in the same, like, 2 days.
Oh, God, yes.
And right before that, we had an appointment for this cute little house in East Durham with, like, the sweetest human being. Like, I adore her. She had this gorgeous, like, very, like, earthy person. She had this gorgeous, her yard was, like, designated as a natural habitat. I mean, all of the things.
Right.
Like, we walked through, and she had this super cute house. And I forgot to tell you that she had a room that was all reptiles. So you were going through trying to, like,
I know, that dirty little
stage
trick.
everything of that. And I was like, and so she's like, can you put a drape over that? And Chrysti, is there a sign you can say that says don't touch things? The best part, you smiled all the way through it. You're like, yeah, this is great. And I think we were, like, right next to the car, and you just, fucking shit, Chrysti, I'm reptile. And I will never, ever forget the look on your face. I was like, I'm really sorry. I don't know how I forgot. But you, seamless. Like, I mean, you just drape. Chrysti, can you make a sign? And I did. I had a little don't tap on the glass. Don't feed the wildlife. And we just continued on.
I think a lot of what I do is, I could thank the Academy for a lot of what I do. It's a lot of acting. I mean, you should have seen where I was yesterday. I'll tell you off the camera, but I mean, just. And then one of our recent ones.
Oh, I already know where you're going with this.
Good Lord. I know. I think my favorite part about that was this guy appeared to be, like, such a badass. But then the next thing is he had a secret safe with guns and billions of dollars in it. And he, like, shows me all the stuff in the safe. And I'm like, what? Isn't this why you have, like, this camouflage secret safe in the wall?
Oh my gosh. And so, like, I've been working with this family for years, and it, like, caught me off guard, because I just remember being like, Lindsay, everything's fine, and, like, not knowing what else to say. But I was like, they just opened the safe full of guns and stacks of cash in front of my, like, I cannot.
Right?
Hey, you smiled. You're like, that's so neat. And we continued.
Because, like, what else am I gonna say? Like, you are.
Yeah, and then I
Go ahead.
cannot.
What are you gonna say?
I cannot imagine if we had done, like, if anybody else had been there, because at least I could say to you, like, I don't know, Lindsay. Like, it took me a day to process what happened. Like, it really, really did.
Well, I think that is the thing about being a stager. And I always say, I need to know what I didn't even know I needed to know. I need to have a comeback and have a poker face, like I can handle anything. And I can't. And
yeah, you do.
I do. For instance, staging this cutie little patootie that went under contract, in 2 days? The one that we just did? That bed, never in my staging career have I moved a solid wood king sleigh bed with the bracket thing in the middle from one wall to another and put the rug halfway under like it's supposed to go by myself. I don't know how I did that. I don't know how I did that. It's like, check off the box of things that you didn't know you could do.
I am amazed every single time, and it's so funny because that seller was like, do I need to do this? Do I need to do this? And you're like, it's fine. I got it. And she would text me, and, like, I think I texted you about the Adirondack chairs.
Yeah.
Because she was like, is this, like, she said she was going to be okay. Are you sure? And I'm like, I will check on it. And, like, They don't know that there's like superhuman strength. Like, I know you used to be a dancer, but I think there's a Hulk in there.
Yeah. Thanks, man. This woman was concerned that I was not going to be able to move 2 really heavy Adirondack rocking chairs from the front porch around to the deck. And I was like, what do you see what I do with your bed?
He said he was like 1,000-pound bed. The thing was insane.
My God. We do. We encounter some crazy shit. And
but
back
then,
to go back.
I was going to say, like, if we can flip, like, there's, guns and cash in reptile room. But then, when we opened the closets at that last house, and there's like perfection, and it's like, nope, Lindsay, she didn't do that for you. Like, she literally like lives that way, right? Like, I mean, there was, you open the closet, nothing to declare, and like that was just everywhere, because I mean, it was just like, so I feel like there's there's a balance for everyone where you're like, oh, this is going in my book. There's just like, oh my gosh, you're like I don't know, I'm gonna say astounding in the complete opposite direction.
I think what you're trying to say is that even down to, okay, so we've got the guy who had, I'm sorry to say, the most disgusting house with the dogs and the smell and the mud and the just the way. And then we have the one that we just did where I moved the bed, and she was like so neat, had everything organized in little compartments in all of her drawers. I know because I've been through everybody's drawers. But even those people who live so meticulously have to have a staged home, because I'm going to bring in the warmth, the story, I guess.
And it looked amazing. And I think it was really cool that she understood that.
I know. She was good. What was I going to tell you? Oh, just to digress for a second. I'm really, really upset about, and this is has nothing to do with design or anything. Gilman, that's Brittany, our producer, is going to be like, what? But I just wanted to say, we now know that 80,000 people are actually listening to this. I thought it was 4.
Yeah.
I'm I'm blown away. But whoever's listening, I'm having such a hard time with what just happened in Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
I have a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
And I am just beyond, I can't imagine being one of those parents. I can't imagine being in that community. I just got off the phone with Daisy's principal, because I called just to say, I'm having a really hard time with this. I need to know the lockdown protocol right now. Walk me through the entire thing, because I think parenting makes you crazy. Like, if that shooter was not killed, I would have killed her, with my bare hands. And here we are, talking about being professional and successful and being friends and working together. And there's also a part that goes back to parenting. Here I am sitting here talking to you about doing your house, and I'm like, was I pregnant? You said you took Daisy to school, and then there was COVID. We have been through so much as parents, and it just keeps getting the anxiety that I feel. I'm thinking about this because I think about what a great distraction my job is. And going through drawers of the meticulous little organizational people, it's a distraction because I love being in somebody else's home that I don't have to worry about anything except when the photographer deadline is. But I'm just so upset about what happened. And I feel like it's just getting closer and closer and closer to Raleigh, Durham. Chrysti's in Durham. I'm in Raleigh. It's kind of the same thing, but not really.
Oh, don't say that. Team Durham.
I know. You are so Team Durham. And Durham is so cool and urban and cool. And Raleigh is so well, but that's another thing. That's another thing I want to talk about. We live in a very elite community. I've done that on purpose.
We do.
I want, Daisy plays tennis at the country club. We are among high society people.
Mm-hmm.
This happened at a Christian school.
Yeah. Nobody is immune. No, and that, I think that was one of the, Nope. And my kids are in high school, so they're 17, about to be 17 and 18. They're juniors and seniors. And I remember, like they were very little when we had to turn off the news after Sandy Hook, and then like now they text me from school like, "What's this lockdown?" So
I couldn't even.
It's the same thing. Like I love that we get to, as part of our job, that is the escape of like, it's for pictures, we get to create
a story, a beautiful
story.
Place.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I get to stage a beautiful place so that it like takes us away from what's really happening in the world, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that, get it off my desk, get it off my chest. Still going to be there.
The Design Time from the Flora podcast is sponsored by Floorily, your premier source for designer-inspired floors. Use Floorily's live chat with real human beings to answer your flooring questions and even book a free in-home consultation.
And we're back. Hey, posse. So I'm sorry, but as parents, I think that it's important for you to see the side of me that is not always fun and bubbly and effusive. It's a hard time. Anyway, I just wanted everybody, all 80,000 of you who are listening, to know that I am with you. Okay, speaking of children, I have a 9-year-old daughter, as you know, that is so particular. I don't know where that comes from. And so you've heard me talk about our personal renovations all along. We are in complete hell. The reason why this is my background is because I've been in this apartment for going on 10 months. That is 6 months more than I ever budgeted for. That is a total of $20,000 that I don't know where I've pulled it out of my asshole. And we have to be in by, like, in April. It's happening. So anyway, what I'm telling you is everybody gets a new room. I get to turn finally my very own masterpiece after 48 years of having all of the ideas and, collecting little tidbits of what I'm going to do when I finally get to do my own house. I get to do it. So let's talk about Daisy's room. Daisy is very into cheetahs and tigers and leopards. So of course, we have hot pink wallpaper on one focal wall with leaping cheetahs. It's awesome. So she's got light pink upholstered single beds coming in. But what is the color that I paint on the other 3 walls to go with this flying cheetah wall, right? I thought about black. Well, it's a little too black, too much black. 3 walls. And also I'm doing a black bathroom, which watch the other podcast to hear about that. But so I decided on a very bold and vibrant color called Sherwin-Williams Cherries Jubilee. And I liked the way the red and hot pink of it kind of went with the hot pink cheetah wallpaper, like Valentine's Day, like pink and red, right? So cute, right? So it's all up on the walls. And Daisy comes to me when we were just there on Monday. Today's Wednesday. And she's like, Mom, I can't. I'm not going to be able to sleep. It's not me. And I'm like, oh my God. And I said, listen, you're not a puny pink kind of girl. I can't do light pink on your walls. And I said, we could do Navajo white because that's like the color of the cheetahs, but you don't want to have Navajo white. It's just not bold enough for you. You're a badass. Mm-hmm. We say BA, but she knows that means badass. So I'm talking to Bikes and I'm like, what the fuck am I going to paint these walls? It's hard because it can't be blue. It can't be purple. It has to be the right pink. What am I going to do? So I have a solution. And it's a good one. It's actually the smartest thing that Daisy's ever said in 9 years of life. She comes to me yesterday morning and she goes, I got it. And I'm like, what is it? What is it? Tell me. What is it? Gold. And I'm like, oh my God, you mean like shiny brass gold? And she's like, yes. What? And I'm like, what? I want it. And so then I'm like, fuck, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make gold walls? So my contractor, Melvin, who's now all in charge of our renovation, he says, go to Benjamin Moore. I'm a Sherwin-Williams kind of girl, but he tells me to go to Benjamin Moore. He says, use my account. Okay, go. Here I go. I walk in and I'm like, I'm looking for gold. I want to do 3 walls gold. And they're like, what? Nobody's ever done that. They use gold metallic paint for like furniture or picture frames or something. And I'm like, well, prepare to be blown away because we're doing gold walls. So look what I did. I have to show you.
Gold walls?
Okay. So, I mean, like, how are we going to do this? First, we started with this. And I was like, no, that's terrible. It's brown. I hate it. Then we went to like a bronzy. And I was like, nope, too light. Not good enough. Look at this amazing gold color. Do you see how it's shiny?
Amazing.
Look at that. Isn't that amazing? So here's what I did. Here's the solution, Pod Posse. You're welcome. So if I look at an entire wall of samples, my eye immediately goes to here because this is like a flat gold color, right? This particular color is called suntan yellow. So I'm saying to these guys that had no idea that Lindsay the Stager was going to come in and rock their world upside down because I have an idea. I'm in the back with them and we're mixing and we're shaking and we're trying all of these and I'm making them open containers and everything. I had 1 hour to do this before I had to pick up Daisy. So this is, first we're going to prime those crazy cherry jubilee walls because we got to get that out. Then we're going to put 1 base coat of the suntan yellow, let that dry. And then we are using, it's called Modern Masters Metallic Gold. Isn't that amazing? And so we paint the gold over the base color and voila, Daisy's going to have gold walls.
How excited is she?
Because she's my golden girl. Isn't that such a cool idea? I'm very excited. I'm very excited. I am very exciting, but I'm excited.
What
do you think?
Love it. I love it. I'm like super excited for her. She's going to be like, I don't know, I'm just like remembering when I was 9. So, mind you, this was the like early 90s. So like at that point in time, sponge painted walls were like the shit. You know what I mean? Like where you got your sponge and like did that.
Oh, yes.
But if I had ever said that I wanted some like bold like color, it would have been shot down immediately. So I'm like thinking about these like, oh yeah,
really?
Like it would not have gone at all. Like I can't remember what I did ask for, but it ended up being this like neutrally kind of like lightish blue and then white, which in retrospect sounds very much like a boy's room. But like I mean, I'm just imagining like,
how did your room look as a 9-year-old?
I had the blue and the only one of the walls was sponge painted. Yeah, only one of the, so it was the
color?
Blue with white sponge paint on it. And then I had
did you do it?
And then I had white furniture with like the day bed, like the the like white metal with like the little like gold bits. Yes,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
It is
oh my god,
like
so
early
cute.
90s kids room that you could probably imagine. Yes. Just
So when I was 9, it was 1984. Okay? I had the Michael Jackson poster of him in the yellow sweater vest before he like got the nose and all the things on the back of my door. And we moved into a house in Tampa, Florida that already had a focal wall of this like crazy blue flowery Laura Ashley thing. And that was my room. But it's funny when you talk to Lindsay the Stager 38 years later, it's not that I was changing the color and wanting to do the sponge like you did. I was just constantly rearranging my room every week and my friends' rooms and anything that I could get my hands on to like rearrange. Isn't that interesting that I never thought of being an interior decorator? I was always going to be a dancer. But I always had that like love for changing and rearranging things in a different way. Interesting. Huh?
See, I think that's why it's like such a good compliment. Like I tell everyone, like I defer to you for everything because I could go to the Nasher every day of the week and it would not make me an artist, right? Like I can't do that. Like I've always been like really like I've loved like going and like looking at different neighborhoods and like, you know, I've always been interested in houses. And not like in a way of like, oh, I love architecture, like more like I'm just nosy, right? Like I just I wanted to see those things, right? So like it wasn't like that, but like you were like already like telling stories, you know, like whereas I was like, you know, I would have to walk a lot as a kid through neighborhoods, so I would see everything be like, you know, what does it look like from one block to the next?
Right, like you loved real estate. Yeah. But also, Chrysti, that is not why you are good at what you do. You are good at what you do because you advocate for your clients.
Yeah.
You go to bat for them. You take care of them in every way. And I think that is what, when you just said that your seller said, oh my God, I didn't know you were going to do all this. You're going to like pull out the red carpet for them. You're going to like have everything perfect. You've never wavered in that, and that's what makes you so good, and that's why people want you to be their realtor. If I do say so myself.
And I do think that it has a lot to do with, you know, I come from a background of service, like, you know, like between being a teacher and then even like when I say that I was in the military before that, like my job in the military required a lot of like service for what I was doing, like how I was handling my caseloads and things like that. So like for me, if I was to think of my job like sales, I wouldn't be able to do it. Right. Like that's what I do, is to show up as a service. And I get kind of picky. Like if I think that I'm getting a service and I'm like, what do you mean I have to do that myself? Right. Like this is, I am like that.
Yes.
Right. And I don't ever want anybody, you know, obviously, if you're a client, like you have your responsibilities, there's the things that you have to take care of. But like, how am I going to ask somebody to show up to do their job if they're paying me to do like that service? Like, how do I make this better for you? How do I make this easier for you? How do I take what you're investing either over the course of owning your home or that time where we're saying, you have a shit ton of homework before we can get you any kind of pictures, right? Like, how can I say I need you to show up this way if I don't show up the same or more really for them? And that's that's my job.
Such good advice. It's setting up everyone for success. For instance, remember safe in the wall guy that we were just talking about? So when you have me stage your homes, you always supply me, which is not what every realtor does. You supply me with good bedding, shower curtains, accessories, cookbooks, a rolling pin, all the things that you know that I'm going to use because that's how I tell the story. You give it to me. And I love that. That's so awesome because sometimes people don't have the things that we're looking for. So you guys, safe in the wall guy, he was stinky, and he stunk up all of our bedding. Is this okay to say? Should we cut it?
The thing is, like, it did. Like, all of these things did happen, and it's not like, one, I am incredibly proud of that house, and like I'm gonna say that, like I am incredibly proud of the work that we did at that house, because we did get him exactly what he wanted, and we came from like, dude was a bachelor with dogs and just habits in the house.
See, like, this is such good, true stories that people are dying to hear.
It was much more of a challenge than I thought it would be. And I knew it was going to be a challenge going in. I knew that he like smoked in his house, and I knew that he had 3 dogs, and I knew that he is just a dude with a lot of stuff in that house that doesn't get cleaned up very much. And I am incredibly proud of that property. And like a lot of that, like that was you. Like we got the stuff out. Mostly kind of.
I think, but it's not that I got the stuff out. I told him to get the stuff out, and he got it out. I want people to know that I don't organize tax returns that are laying around. Do you know what I mean? Like I say, here's a pile of crap. I would never say that. I would say, here is something that we need to remove. And then they remove it, and then I can come back and do my work. So he took a lot of my recommendations.
And
it
was challenging because he didn't want to. He didn't want to.
Well, he had to.
He really did not want to.
Yeah,
and we were really lucky that we were, one, he did it, and two, we had his family kind of in our corner on a lot of those things too. Like we were able to get support for us to support him, which was huge. But when you tell me that people don't show up with those things, like I can't imagine not doing it. Like I can't. Like, and I did. I lost like I lost a good bit of items. Like I couldn't take them back to my storage shed. I did not want them. Some of them went in Cliff's truck. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the moral of this story. She let him keep the bedding.
Good cost of doing business. And it made me reflect on, do I need a policy in place? Because I think I do from now on, like lesson learned. But in that case, like we got the job done. We did an amazing job. We got him exactly what he wanted. He didn't want to do an open house. He did it. Like he did not, because staging or living in a staged house sucks. And he was doing that with dogs, and it just didn't like vibe with the kind of life he wanted to live. And we took pictures on Wednesday. I think you came in on a Wednesday to stage. We did pictures that day. Thursday night, it went on the market. And then Friday, he was like, if I accept this offer, do I have to do an open house tomorrow? And I was like, well, you don't. But you don't get any offers from over the weekends. And he was like, cool. And that house showed so well that he was able to get the offer he wanted on the very first day. And it saved him from really like interrupting, like he's building a house and he's got a toddler and he did not want to interrupt his life anymore. So he did all of that really hard homework ahead of time. Maybe not to the, way that could have been the path of least resistance, but he did it. And he got exactly what he wanted at the end. And it wouldn't have happened. I mean, I can't imagine what would have happened if we tried to put that house on the market in the condition that it was in when we walked through.
The way that it was.
Yeah. And because you couldn't see what a beautiful house it was.
I have this visual of Cliff, your husband, mopping the floor to get the dog mud off the floor while I was staging.
The next day we were there changing lights.
That's the thing. That's what I mean. Yes. You pull in like all the troops. You set me up for success by giving me the bedding. And then I got new bedding at the one that we just did last week because he kept the bedding. I hope you made him pay for that. But that is my goal. That is a perfect example of I stage a home for the first people to walk in the door. I want to sell it to them because I want them to feel like, oh my God, I don't want anybody else to see my house. I call this the mother-in-law nudge, the color. We need more money so we can get this house because that's who I stage it for, is the first people who walk in the house.
That comes back to kind of like being that investment in them and in me. I know that and for any client, but like, again, like in his case where he was living with like all of those dogs, and well, I say all of those, he had 3 dogs. I have 3 dogs too. Like whatever. It's not like all of those dogs, like he had like a kennel or anything. But he was dealing with that and a kid. And can you imagine if we had to have this conversation week after week and this was in November, right? Like this was when people were really uncertain about the market. He went on the market 2 days after a 3/4 rate hike where they were predicting another one coming in December. So there was a lot of uncertainty during that time. And can you imagine if we had said, well, we're not going to do any of these things. And by the way, I'll see you next weekend when you're on the market then. And next week, and like the longer you're on the market, the lower your prices. So it's an investment in everyone, because if somebody says to me, I want to make the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time, and I say, I can do that. I can't do that if I don't.
But you just have to do exactly what we say.
I can't do that for you if I don't show up and you don't show up. And by you, I mean like you, Lindsay, and like you, client, everybody has to show up to make that happen.
I know. But speaking of that crazy time of the market in November, okay, everybody said, oh, the market is going to balance. I've had conversations with my friend Melanie Jones. Out of her mouth, she said, the market is going to balance. I feel like everything that started off this year has completely made everybody look like they don't know what they're talking about, because we're still getting over asking. We're still getting tons of showings. The inventory is still ridiculously low.
So
what's going on?
It was really
Realtor?
funny. Like right before we got on here, there was this news thing about how, prices in San Francisco, like properties have lost 10% of their value. And, it depends on how you read it. And despite the facts that I couldn't tell you before what the percentage over was, I am very much a numbers nerd. Anybody who knows me has seen my Excel spreadsheet of market data. And we don't have inventory. And I am really curious to see what's going to happen soon. Because like right now, I just had a client who bought a house sight unseen, which I have not done since last year. But the other house on that street that she wanted to buy went under contract sight unseen before she could buy it. And she said, I'm not losing this one. So like, there's that. Before that, she had lost on multiple offers. And one of them was $50,000 over with some really aggressive other terms. And we were told we were middle of the pack.
Oh,
and these aren't like the house that she just sold. We listed at 700, the one that you and I were just talking about. And she above asking in 2 days, right? And the days on market for that price point. Yeah.
I was going to ask
you that. The days on market for that price point are considerably longer than 2 days. Like the median days on market. And I have to give her some credit too. They did some amazing, I mean, like if I could have her kitchen, like,
God.
Just the whole house, like everything, the whole package when it went on the market, like,
the beams. Those wood
and the
beams.
way, like, the work that they did, and then the way you showed it off, I mean, it was unbeatable, like, absolutely unbeatable. But, the houses that she's looking at is at a significantly lower price point, and we're seeing those super aggressive offers again. And then there was a news article not too long ago where they're like, the triangle market has, fewer home sales, and, like, it's not because people aren't buying houses, it's because there's no houses to buy. Right. So like I know it's so hard when people listen to the national news and then they get this snippet of what the market is. And it's like, wait a minute, it's not the same context. So if you're hearing that like prices are falling and like, there's fewer people buying houses here, that means there's fewer houses to buy. And
when I was calling you in January and I'm like, dude, what's going on? Well, it's because if there's no homes to sell, there's no homes to stage. And then I think you were saying, or you or any realtor was saying, well, it's because the interest rates have skyrocketed. But nuh-uh. People are still doing over asking because everybody will always need a house to live in.
I have a feeling that we're not done with 2020 and 2021 yet. Because all of these people with 2.5% interest rates, in a couple of years, when normally the cycle is like 3, 5, 7 years, something like that, for somebody to have a house and then sell it, they're not going to want to move. Like I've been in our house now. We bought our house in 2016, and in 2016 we got a 3.25% interest rate, which was pretty awesome. I'm not selling my house. I'm not selling my house. I love my mortgage payment, so we're not done.
So. A perfect example. This is why we have this little gem inside the belt, are investing in addition, because my husband financed the house for 1 point. Drop the mic right there. You know what I mean? Like, why would we ever live in an apartment for 10 months? Because of this.
So that is what I see happening. So I have a few buyers who are under contract now for new construction. And I joke, kind of a joke, not really a joke, with the agents that are on site, where I'm like, we need you guys to pick up. Like we need you now. We are really going to need you a couple years from now and like further down, because when people get settled and they're like, oh, if I move, I'm not really going to be getting more house for the payment that I have. Like they're not going to want to move. Or they're going to have to think a lot more about it before they go to their next place. And I just don't see people. I mean, everybody always has to move. Everybody always needs to sell a house or buy a house at some point in time. But if you're comfortable with your mortgage payment,
I know. Then why?
Where are you going to go?
And that's the house that you picked out one time. So fall in love with it again.
If
paint
it's
the
cheaper
walls.
it's cheaper to remodel it or add an addition, maybe that's the better bet.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting.
Bert's saying to wrap it up, but I don't want to. Don't you want to ask me something that you're dying to know? I mean, you can't. So
I think the question that I get all the time whenever I'm in a property or like doing something for staging it, or they're asking me about what the staging appointment is going to be. I obviously don't do the staging. The question I get all the time is, what is, if I had to do one project, so I don't mean like decluttering or like moving this thing. If I had to do one thing to make my house more marketable, and I could only pick one, if I could only pick one thing to make my house more marketable, and I want to take paint off the table because I think that's the most obvious. So
okay.
I
no
know
pressure.
I feel like paint's the most obvious question, but like, what's the one thing you could do to make your house more marketable? And
I have two.
Okay.
The first impression people see is the curb appeal. They're going to make a decision. Right now, I'm mad because we've spent so much time and ideas and money inside of our whole house, and the outside looks like shit. And I'm like, God, why didn't I think about that? And I'm a stager. But I think that start with the mailbox. It's so simple and sounds so stupid, but if those numbers are like gnarly and the stickers are coming off and there's bird poop on top of the mailbox and it looks like the post needs a new paint job, start there. Plant some daisies around the mailbox. Make it look cute. There's that. That's the first thing. One thing. Start there. Okay, so let's do it like a spectrum. If you have no money, look at the mailbox. Curb appeal. And also, get the shit out of your yard. To see NC State, this is what we sit in to watch the game chairs on your front porch. First of all, there's nothing wrong with NC State, but in this town, you cannot show your sports teams. Okay? So that's, if you don't want to spend any money, then make the mailbox look really cute and make the front porch look pulled together. And then if you do want to spend a couple $1,000, and I really do mean just a couple $1,000, new countertops. Now it's a slippery slope because house that I'm doing, she's got old white appliances. But it's outdated and in the price range of $500,000. I think she needs new countertops, but then you can't do new countertops if you don't do the backsplash. And then if we do the backsplash, what about painting the wood cabinets white? And then what about the white appliances? So that is a slippery slope. However, kitchens and baths sell homes. Everybody knows that. So if you put money into kitchens and baths, you will get it back. Also, though, think outside of the box. For instance, a peel and stick floor gives such a cute little return on your investment and looks so stylish. If you have terrible linoleum and you go to Lowe's and you spend 89 cents a square foot, and it's like such a good update. And
I've seen some magic with those.
Yeah. I just posted one. I just did one. It was the same peel and stick floor that we did in our industrial kitchen that we were living in before we did the reno. And it works. It's so adorable. Home Depot. So that's it. Now we have to go. We've taken too long.
Easy peasy. Thank you, Lindsay. This has been so fun.
Thank you, Chrysti. I know. I love working with you. It's hard to believe that it's been 4 years. But the most important part is our friendship because we love working together and getting all of the success that we continue to get. And it's fun.
It is fun.
So thank you for being my guest today. Thank you, Pod Posse, all 80,000 of you. What? I'm going to sign out. This is Lindsay the Stager, and you have been watching Design Time from the Floor Up. Peace.
Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, comment, or subscribe. If you don't like it, then off.